Hello, citizens of the internet. It is me. Uh, I said that like if people were supposed to immediately know who I am. But, anyways, if you are here listening again or for the first time, this is Casual Conversations with me, Carlz. The only space on the internet that I know of where some bald guy takes ideas he probably previously uttered in Spanish and tries to convey them back in English. So I usually take 1 week and then I come back like having, I don't know, how could you say, like processing the ideas that I try to convey in Spanish, but this time back in English. So, in today's episode, there's one thing I must begin with, which is two disclaimers, very important disclaimers, before we even entering into today's topic. So, disclaimer number one: I love Star Wars. Growing up as a kid, like there were two things that I loved beyond everything else, which was sci-fi and fantasy. And of course, Star Wars is nothing but the combination of these two great, massive elements, right? So I've loved it since I was a kid. And this is one first thing to have in mind, right? The fantasy and sci-fi elements of Star Wars have been like a platform for imagination for me and for millions of other people for what, 50 or so years by now. Wait, 70, 80, 90, whatever, 40 or 50. And disclaimer number two is that I hate talking about Star Wars. I think that by the passing of the years, Star Wars have become this sort of massive phenomenon on its own, right? That goes beyond media or like Americana, as they used to say before. Like, it's just this huge big thing, and even more so when they got bought by Disney and whatnot, right? The point is, Star Wars is by now just this massive thing that it's, I guess, beyond what any other franchise on earth could even aspire to be. And this is another thing to keep in mind when you think about Star Wars, because without a doubt, this impact it has on general culture always puts all of their products in a different perspective, right? You can say like basically you can't just grade the Star Wars product like on the void, ironically, since it happens in space, but like all the things that people say about the characters, the, I don't know, the controversies, everything. Like you can't talk Star Wars without that, and that is one of the reasons why I hate talking about Star Wars in particular. But anyways, with those two disclaimers out of the way, let's dive into today's subject, which is my honest opinion about Andor, the latest live-action series. Uh, like I don't know who hasn't seen Andor by now, but in a nutshell, it's a prequel story about Cassian Andor, right? Which was the leading guy who stole the blueprints for the Death Star during the, I don't remember, 2000 what? It might be like 10 years old by now. Rogue One. So the movie Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Oh, now that I remember that, I think that if I remember correctly, they were supposed to do like a bunch of Star Wars stories, right? Like back then, that was part of the plan, like to make several Star Wars stories and focus on different characters and stories. But anyways, scrap that idea. But the fact is, Cassian Andor was played by Diego Luna, was the main guy, the leader of this squadron who was in charge of stealing the Death Star plans, which of course ends up in what happens in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Thanks to them, they blew up the Death Star. Spoilers. 30-year-old spoilers. So, the first season of Andor was a hit, no doubt. It might have not been everyone's favorite, but it was a hit. And with the passing of the years, I've been feeling a little bit, you can say, like overwhelmed by Andor's success. And this is due to the fact that, and this is my main kind of like, I don't know, commentary about it. I don't get it. Like, I really don't get why Andor was so big. I don't get why people think it's so good. And don't get me wrong, I think it's a great series and I enjoyed it a lot. Although I had like a bunch of issues, but I enjoyed it, and you could even say that I loved it. But I loved it because, as I said at the beginning, like, I'm a Star Wars enjoyer. Like, I even suffer through like the book of Boba Fett, which is garbage, right? Um, I just like being in this universe in general. But, and let's go right into one of the issues that I had with the series as a whole, is that, for example, in season one, I couldn't understand the purpose of it. You know, Andor is not only a prequel, but it's also sort of like a series that tends to focus on something that many reviewers, and like my personal favorite Star Wars reviewer, which is Star Wars Explained on YouTube, right? They mentioned this Andor being representative of like the adult side of Star Wars. Like Andor is supposed to be not for kids. It's like serious. It deals with serious topics and subjects, and that is true, right? Like, jumping to season two for a bit. Like, season two has I don't know, on screen like kills and deaths. Like, one of the one is not a main character, but one of the secondary characters gets shot in the head. Um, there's talk about, or not talk, but like there's implications of trauma, not only psychological but sexual trauma. Like, there are hints of rape and abuse by Adria Arjona's character, right? So there are like several important topics, but, and here's like the big but, my biggest gripe, which I've been like nurturing not only since my previous episode but since season 2 ended, and it's the following. Like, I don't think this adult size, or like this adult side, why am I confusing size with side? I don't know. But like, this adult side of Star Wars, it seems a little off to me. Like, borderline inappropriate, or like, how can you say, like, irrelevant. So it seems that many people have seen like a lot of impact and importance in Andor's portrayal of rebellion and on tyranny, right? There's a couple of things that I think about it when I saw the show. One of them was thinking like, okay, this metaphor type of commentary, it's like really, what is the term, like self-serving, or like I don't know, like pointless. So if we see, especially during Andor season 2, right, the main storyline of Andor season 2 is the Empire taking over this planet called Gorman, German, whatever, right? And during the whole series, there's a big mystery on why the Empire wants it. Of course, many people already suspected what was the real purpose once we saw Krennic. What is his name? Like Special Lieutenant Krennic, whatever. But like the character from Rogue One coming back for Andor season 2. When we saw him, many people said, and I believe them, that the whole Gorman thing had something to do with Kyber crystals, right? Which is the crystals that are used to it's not to create, but they concentrate the energy needed for lightsabers to become sabers, right? And it's the same crystals they use for the Death Star's Death Ray. What is the name of the ray? Whatever, who cares, right? The whole point is, the big structure is the Empire comes for this planet, but this planet is an alleged independent planet, part of the, still technically a republic, right? Because even though it's already rebranded as the Galactic Empire, like the Senate is still there, and like uh, for some weird reason, they still have the Senate, and they still have like people on living under this like fake illusion of governance. But the whole point is they go for this planet, and of course it's a small planet. It's like really hidden, and it has a small population, and of course they start repressing them, which everything culminates in this big. They overhype the Gorman massacre, right, where the Empire opened fire over the free peoples of Gorman. So the subject itself and the way the story developed, it's great. Okay, it's fun. It's fun to see, but I couldn't help but feeling that it was just like a mask for like trying these all these subjects in a really shallow manner. Like, okay, let's talk tyranny, right? Let's talk violence. Let's talk authoritarianism, right? Let's talk about it. Then you go watch Andor, and do they really talk about these things? I felt like deeply frustrated with Andor as it constantly seems to move closer to either talking about these subjects or like portraying them in a sort of like an important manner, but to me it always falls short. And that led me to like the big feeling that I had with Andor, which is that I feel like it's lukewarm as a series. Of course, the contrast in that is why I mentioned the first two disclaimers at the beginning. Of course, the context of it being Star Wars, a series which, I don't know, you have like fucking Darth Vader dancing the Macarena in Fortnite, right? Or like, I don't know, Star Wars Lego 6, The Revenge of the Block, or whatever, right? So if you contrast Andor to that, it might seem a lot. It might seem like a strong thing. But as the series itself doesn't go over what it can do, which is as a prequel, right? Like not showing too much, not saying too much. It's lukewarm. And one of the things that make me feel like it's lukewarm is the fact that, for example, I read and saw many reviews that talk about how important it was for Star Wars to show, for example, stormtroopers like shooting people, like plain old shooting people. That it was supposed to show the Empire's cruelty, or like one of the most talked about scenes on Andor season 2, which was the attempt rape of Adi Arjona's character, right, by an Imperial officer. How it showed like the cruelty of the Empire. And here's my point: the way they show that. I'm not saying that. I have to say, I wasn't expecting her to be raped on screen for a Star Wars show. Don't get me wrong. It's just an example. How they introduce subjects. But did they change any image you could have about the Empire? Like, if you take Andor and contrast with like the big storylines of the Skywalker saga, like which for those that don't know is the period between episode 1 and episode 9, right, which is now called the Skywalker saga, which has all to do with Luke Skywalker and Anakin, right, and Leia, and I guess Rey. But like, if you take those images of Empire, like the fantasy side, it's like good versus evil, right? It's like the Empire is bad because we are good. Like they wear black and shoot like fucking lighting out of their hands. Like they're bad. They follow the dark side of the Force, which it's, I don't know, what do they even say? Like anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. No, anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Whatever, like all the bad feelings. So if you grew up with Star Wars like me, and you grew up with this idea, this fantasy idea, That is what you love about it. Like, and I don't mean to be like just innocent about it, or like just saying that uh, Star Wars doesn't have a right to be more quote unquote serious or like realistic about it, and it doesn't all they have to be with like creepy fish alien types or anything like that. Like no, they can do it, but they would always feel lukewarm compared to any other media that shows the same, but in a realistic environment. Like I didn't need a whole 8 episode series to reaffirm me the fact that the Empire was bad. I knew that beforehand from the movies, right? And from everything I watch about Star Wars. I knew it. And why I think it's lukewarm for Star Wars to show like rebellion or oppression in this way, why I think it's lukewarm, because ultimately Star Wars and their overlords Disney, they are not the rebellion, they're always going to be the Empire. You see my point? It's like the way I thought about it, I thought like, okay, will we have like big revolutionaries and like democracy fighters and like fucking like Greta Thunberg types of young people that watch Andor and get like deeply inspired by its portrayal of resistance against tyranny? I don't know, and I'm not saying that it can happen, but there's really not enough strength for me. There are a couple of scenes and a couple of characters that do this borderline from an emotional standpoint, right? Skarsgård character, the don't ask me about names, but the Skarsgård's character, like this lady, no, not this lady here, also, but many other characters just fell flat, and they feel all like oddly like comfortable and just being like small contrast of an expression that is supposed or aspires to be more important than what they are. Let's talk about some of those characters. Let's talk about like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, which are characters that I do remember their names because they're like fairly more important than others, right? Like we have a whole story arc about Mon Mothma, and like she's just a rich person who goes like, "Hey, what the Empire is doing is wrong. This is wrong." But like, dude, it's already called the Galactic Empire. Like, what was the point? Trying to convey the idea that Mon Mothma and the likes were trying to change the Empire from the inside all along? Like, that part just never said like good with me. During episode 4, like you can say, okay, like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, they were like insiders. In my mind, they were like, I don't know, leaking lots of important information or whatnot, or like being true leaders. Especially Mon Mothma, which is a character that seems to have done a lot, like as a leader. But if you compare what she does in Andor with what she does, let's say in Star Wars Rebels, the animated series, it's like night and day. Like I don't find Mon Mothma on Andor to be like a really inspiring character. It seems like just another rich person that like from the comfort of their home feel like, oh, this is wrong, I'm gonna do something. And that's all good and fine, as I keep saying. But the point that I'm trying to convey is that all of these things happen in the context of a reality, or like more better say a fantasy, in which they fall flat or lukewarm. Like they're not really that relevant, because they are not. Like let's think about the office boy and Empire lady. Don't ask me their names, right? But they are a returning character from season 1, right? Okay, he's supposed to like be this portrait of like an alienated office worker whose life is so shitty that they just like live in these boxes, these squares. It's like basically like a more boring, shitty version of like Severance, right? Like no, like corporate life is so shitty, and like but like he tries to excel, and like she too feels like the pressure of being an agent of the empire, and even though she is behind the motivations of the empire, anything, like they are still cruel to her. So again, two portrayals of suffering under the cruelty of the empire, which are already understood. Like, like you don't need to show these characters. I already imagined that there were like plenty of office workers suffering under the empire. Like, what's the point? And there are like so many long ass scenes, especially in season one with Office Boy, which I think is a really boring character, right? To this day, I don't understand his purpose. As I said, the furthest I get is that he's supposed to show like the common man alienated under the pressure of like the empire, right? And trying to excel in this circumstance. But this is like so shitty in a way that it doesn't really spark rebellion, you know. Like the other day I was imagining watching this like on your commute from work to your home, like you're watching this on your phone, like I don't know, for like 2-3 hours that take to go to your office job, and you're supposed to feel identified with this guy. Okay, I'm gonna feel identified with this guy, and like, oh, I feel his same suffering, right? Like, yeah, like I live under this empire, which in our reality case is capitalism, right? I live under this empire that alienates me and tortures me and makes me feel like crap, and I probably have a shitty mother like this asshole, right? And then you go like, okay, what is he going to do? Nothing. I'm gonna get shot in the head, right? Like, how are these seeds of rebellion? Even if you compare it, like as I did with Severance, for example, which I talked before, right? At least in Severance, like the contrast they do to show this alienating space, it has to do with emotion, with humanity, and in that sense, it always works. Even inside of Andor itself, the series, it works. Like in what is for me the best part of the whole series is the latter half of season one, right? The now famous factory scene when they are like crafting pieces for the Death Star, and they show them in this prison, which is greatly designed. Like I can't emphasize how good this part is. Like they used concept of the panopticon, right? And like at the alienation of the penitentiary system, how they designed the jail, like with the whole white. So that's a commentary which is adult enough because it leaves space for interpretation, and they don't go overboard. Like it's not overly violent, it's not like graphic or explicit, but you can see it, that you can understand how like dehumanizing is that system, how it works, how cruel it is, and how it turns people into monsters. That shit is great, and the acting is superb in that. But then you get parts like the beginning of season 2, right? Where like Cassian is for like 3 fucking episodes, or like 2 or 3 episodes, like embedded in this ragtag bunch of, they're not even rebels, they're just like random dudes who keep fighting for leadership and everything. What the fuck is that supposed to be? Is that supposed to be like us seeing like pre rebel cells like fighting, and how important was leadership? Like, I don't know. That might be the purpose, but as I was watching it, I was just watching a bunch of annoying characters like talking pointless shit because I already knew the ending of the discussion. Like, and they added nothing. At some points, they even look like comedic, you know. So Andor keeps jumping between these brilliant moments, like almost everything Skarsgård's character does, right? Or like his adoptive daughter, right? But even that character is weird because it has these big speeches in season 1 when it even got like a little like viral, right? Like where he goes like, I have nothing else, or something like that. He goes like, I am nothing in if not rebellion, right? Like again, showing that all of his persona, this lavish like treasure trader thing, is just a mask. Like it doesn't matter to me. And like his performance is great too, right? With his voice, and he's like, this doesn't mean nothing to me, like all there is to me is the mission. So they introduced in season 2 like his assistant as his adoptive daughter, right? And then you get these great moments of drama and tension where he struggles between being nothing, right? Because he said so during season 1, he's nothing but rebellion, and his desire, as his emotional desire to be a father. And that part is everything in that type of interaction happened. It's brilliant. But again, it's a jump and jump. It jumps from being really relevant to being super nothing. So that feeling and that taste in the mouth comes and goes all around the series, like all over the series. It's like Adria Arjona's character, right? Let's go. Oh, let's talk about like trauma. Like she was fucking tortured, right? She was tortured and like she got drug dependent, right? She became a drug addict only to forget her troubles and everything. And it's like, okay, are we gonna go deep with this? Are we gonna go like the big impact of this? Are we gonna go like, okay, this is basically the Empire's fault? Not really, right? In the end, like she would just go like, oh, I'm gonna kill this fucker that like tortured me, and like, okay, I'm done. So all of these elements, they make for great. I was gonna say television, but like technically this is streaming. Like they make for great streaming, and they make for great ideas. And in a sense, I can see why people think this is so good, because these are important topics. These are important topics that need to be addressed and need to be shown, and people get like really hyped and like really like taken by the fact that it's Star Wars showing these things. And part of me agrees, but the memes of Disney being the Empire are not just memes. They're not just jokes, right? Over the weeks after Andor ended, there has been a lot of interviews with Gilroy, right, the series creator, and him saying like, "Oh, Disney allowed us to do so much stuff. Like we managed to do so much things in Andor that could never be expected, and like they allowed us to push the boundaries." And I thought, yeah, they did, but they did so because they know in the end it's not gonna matter. If you think about it, like, okay, they pushed the envelope in the violence and the subjects, but at the same time, they didn't allow them to go all the way. And as I said, I'm not looking to see like gore or like sexual violence on Star Wars. Don't get me wrong, but to make that the focus of the series without being cut short because of the big main plot, or like Gorman, or like the Death Star, or like even though it's quite far, you can tell it gets cut short. They have to go to the rebel base in Yavin, and like there's just so much stuff that sort of distracts me from the idea of these ideas, making any huge splash outside of Star Wars. Like as I mentioned him before, like my favorite Star Wars creator, Star Wars Explained, uh, he keeps like sharing on social media like quotes from the series, like these big, not necessarily political, but like these big intense quotes, like I don't know, stuff from Mon Mothma's address to the Senate, right? Like where she goes, no, like uh tyranny survives if we let it survive, and look, like if we don't denounce her, like, and like she makes this big denouncement of the empire the Emperor Palpatine, right? But all of those things, I think they fall on deaf ears. Like it's never gonna take so much attention as Jedi is like floating through space and like slashing opponents with like colorful sabers. And that's why I made the disclaimer at the beginning. What I love the most about Star Wars was the fantasy and the poetry of it, because that train of thought or that line of argument is timeless. So back to the guy doing his commute to work, right? Like, or her, whatever. They might feel way more inspired by a story of like good versus evil, whatever that means, right? But like in spirit, like the force is everywhere and everything. Like if you feel others and connect with others, like the force will be with you, and like you can grab some inspiration out of it. But if I'll tell you, okay, you gotta rebel against the empire, and it's like, okay, how do I do it? Oh, you gotta steal the plans for the Death Star. What do you mean? I need to like steal the plans to, I don't know, to overthrow capitalism? Like what's the point? Right? And that is why it's lukewarm, because I know Disney and Star Wars cannot be, to me at least, the home for these radical ideas of freedom, or like um, to fight against empire or tyranny. And I think the biggest problem for me, and this is highly personal, is the fact that I'm asking way too much out of Star Wars. As I was recording the Spanish episode, that is something that I haven't thought about it. Like I just watched Andor season 2 and it ended, and I just lay there with this lukewarm feeling that I saw something that, even though it was entertaining, well made, and quite good, eh, it was just another fantasy of rebellion that would end up in nothing, like that it didn't push the boundaries that I wanted. But then I realized this is an idea that is wrong for me to have. It's wrong for me to expect this from Star Wars. What I have to expect is what they gave me. And that then is when I understood why people think this is such a great show. Because under the context of Star Wars, Disney, and whatever you want to call this big scenario of big budget, not even sci-fi or fantasy, just like drama series, I guess it's the best you can get. And as I said, it might be me that is too old or jaded to see some real impact in like some rebellion brought to you by Disney, right? Like rebellion brought to you by corporations. Like I might be a little bit too cynical to swallow that pill, but perhaps somebody will, and to some people it's good enough. To me it's not, and that is why the series is just okay to me. I mean, it's more than okay, it's good. but it's not what I want out of Star Wars. And no quantity of this. It's not even metaphorical, right? It's just straight up like a portrayal of like a social rebellion, like the people on Gorman, which is basically France. They even talk like space French, right? Everything they do and everything they say is just like straight up like rebellion 101. Like you can see it in war movies or whatever, right? Like, no, yeah, we are organizing, we want to rebel and everything, but it's just that. There's nothing new, there's nothing fantastic, there's nothing sci-fi-ish about it. And I guess the big conclusion, the only conclusion that I can get is that there's different you can say like expectations that you can have depending on the context. Sadly, there's something that you can't really control if you've been embedded in this system, or like if you live, I don't know, in a big powerful country and like with a bunch of commodities and everything. You might feel that these graphical expressions of rebellion against tyranny and oppression are fine, and that's fair. Your reality is different, but to me it's just some comfortable commentary that's gonna end there. Like Andor is gonna come and go, and again, as I mentioned him several times because he's just the best. My favorite content creator from Star Wars Explained says, like, I doubt there will be another space for quote unquote adult Star Wars as Andor. Even though it did great, it was like dead talk for a long time. Even though it did great, I doubt there will be another space for adult talk on Star Wars, and it should be. That's what he says. I don't know if it should be, but I would certainly enjoy it. Like, will we ever have like a serious story like that, but like with Jedi's and like the Force and that type? It would be even harder to do. You could argue that some part of the Acolyte was about that too, like in a bit, especially the notions about like fringe sides of the Force and everything. Some of it was there, but I guess that sentence or that statement from him made me think that for some people it's really important. For people that are like really big fans of Star Wars, as I said, I'm a big fan, but I'm not the biggest fan. Like, for those people, it's important to have these parentheses in Star Wars. Not to me though. To me, just bring me more like fantasy lore. Like, that's why I enjoy Ahsoka, the first season, so much, right? I need the Jedi. I need the fantasy, the aliens. I don't want space French people screaming revolution. Like, I would rather have that in real life, if I'm honest. Like, I don't want to see in space. I would rather have it here on Earth. And if I think about sci-fi besides fantasy, and I always think to another franchise which I love, which is Star Trek. One of the best things you can do with sci-fi and with fantasy is to create context, content and context, both works, where whatever you are saying or portraying in any poetic type of way, or like in any metaphorical type of way, can be easily translated or easily expressed in reality. Like, if you take any philosophical stand on Star Trek, for example, like, I know The Measure of a Man, probably the best episode in Star Trek The Next Generation, right? Where they discuss Data's, the android. I'm assuming a lot of people know about Star Trek The Next Generation. They talk about his personhood, right? That is a big transversal topic that goes from the science fiction to reality. But rebellion against tyranny, it's a little bit more complicated. A teeny tiny bit more complicated, especially when the idea of rebellion against tyranny comes with the tyrants from the tyrants themselves, right? It seems too comfortable to make any good splash. But as I said, again, that might be just me. There might be future rebels that once they are in power, right? I don't know, distributing wealth properly among humankind, and like destroying all seeds of tyranny and embracing individuality for the sake of human embetterment. Maybe one of them is gonna go like, oh yeah, when I was 10, I watched this series called ANDOR, and in it, there was this guy called Diego Luna who was really cool. So that's why now Latinos are kings and queens and queers. Who knows? That might be the final outcome of it, but I will probably long gone before any of that happened. And as the topic itself developed, it showed that the mere fact that this is branded as adult Star Wars, to me, it's pointless. It shouldn't be for adult Star Wars. If you wanted to Star Wars to be relevant beyond fantasy, which is what I like, you don't need to do this for kids. You need to do this for everyone. And the fact that it's probably gonna be just this parenthesis inside of Star Wars just goes to prove the point that it's just a lukewarm attempt to give real, quote unquote, real relevancy to a series that, even though it's implicit, it will never be explicit. Its values, because it just can't. Because explicit ideas of rebellion and anarchy do not sell well toys or like movies, right? Like, I don't know. Probably all of the characters from Andor are gonna be toys eventually anyways, which it's even more fun to think about. Maybe they will have like the toy of Office Boy's mom. There might be even... I'm gonna close this show and I'm gonna look for Office Boy's mom toy. And if it is already out there, everything that I have said and felt about Andor would probably be right or confirmed in my mind. We'll see. But anyways, Andor is a great series for any fan of Star Wars, and yeah, recommended for any not necessarily sci-fi fans, but like any fan of Star Wars and any fan of social commentary in general. Its contents, its politics are lukewarm at best, but the performances are great. The production values are like over the top, as Star Wars has us used to. And I hope we have a similar space event or like series on the future of the franchise, but I doubt it. That's it. So, as I'm talking about Star Wars, I have to say the phrase. Misa... Misa rule. No, I'm joking. Thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you all, whichever that means. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.